Hello, welcome to another episode of the As Yet Unnamed podcast. I'm your host, Nathaniel, and with me today, my co-host, Pieres. Hello, Pieres.
Hi, Nathaniel. How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad. So today we are talking about a not product-related topic. We're talking about players returning to VtES after taking a break. And I think there will be a significant, I would say, number of us in the community at large that fall into this category because, it's outside of it being fairly common for people to take a break because life happens. There was also I would think, a significant amount of people who sort of took a break from the game when the game took a break from being published. So, yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, yes?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I started off playing VtES, or was Jihad back in those days, way back in 95. I was pretty young. I was, 12 or 13 or something. I played a little bit of Magic way back when as well, and just really liked the nitty-gritty horror and artwork and the lore, most importantly, behind VtES. So that's how I sort of started then. I was pretty young, didn't really have a play group as such, didn't realise the game was a multiplayer format, didn't really play very many games, or if I did, I didn't play the rules properly, and I definitely only played one-on-one. From there, I always loved, the lore and stuff. I never actually got into the pen and paper game, but I always had a few of the books and, always fascinated with that and Werewolf and so on and so forth. Fast forward to, 2003 or something, 2004, and I picked up a few of the pre-constructed starters back then, which were pretty ordinary, but, still pretty interesting to have a few games with mates, and beer and pretzel games, as some people might call it. And then I think maybe 2005, 2006, I got into the game properly, found a proper play group, and met the crew in Melbourne, Australia. That was pretty exciting. Lived VtES, it was a very big part of my life for a couple of years. Ended up going to uni and unfortunately didn't have time for VtES. So I sort of sold all my stuff about 2007. I should also mention that for a couple of years I was the Prince of Melbourne, running events and trying to drive the scene.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I was. So I took over from Disco Stew as Prince of Melbourne. Attended a few Australian national championships and ran the Melbourne one here. I think it was in 2007, I reckon, or maybe it was 2008. Either way, involved. Loved the game, wanted to do anything to promote it, but unfortunately my friendship circle weren't really keen on it, and I got lured away to play Warhammer. And it was good fun, but I sort of, it was a poor uni student, so I was able to sort of recycle my hobby funds and sold my very large collection off to Steve Harris, Idasoft. I think you know who he is.
Yeah, he's I guess long-time listeners / viewers of the YouTube channel at least would know that he's sponsored a couple of videos before. And I think Steve is currently the national coordinator for Australia, and national. I say national, but we're running a bit loose with this term because he also sort of coordinates for New Zealand, I think.
Well, New Zealand are just another state of Australia, aren't they, Nathaniel?
Ooh. I don't know, man. You're gonna start getting Kiwis with pitchforks in the comments below.
Well, those pricks come over here and win our nationals. They've got to be part of the state, right?
Yeah, 100%. So it looks like it sort of life happened, and then you think this is one of the things that we always say. When you're young, you have time, but you don't have money, and then when you grow up, you have money, and then you don't have time. So, did you? I mean, apart from the fact that VtES being a multiplayer game, and you weren't able to really get a group going with your mates in uni, was the consideration of costs part of why you decided to take a break from VtES?
No, definitely not. It was definitely more of a social thing. And yeah, even though I sold all my cards, I did still keep the third ed players box, and I've still got that to the day. I think I put the box in the recycling the other day when I amalgamated it into my now new collection. But I kept that because it was like, hey, here's 4 decks. They're meant to be relatively balanced against each other, and I can pull it out and play it like a board game with my friends. So I sort of evolved from Warhammer, which I might add had a very competitive tournament scene here in Australia. We'd get tournaments of 100 players, and that was pretty exciting. But I evolved from Warhammer more into the Euro board games, and then I probably realised quite late in the piece that VtES actually plays like a Euro board game.
Because of the resource management sort of bit?
Yeah, resource management, action potential, and action economy, and then you can build up your sort of combos with your bloating, your power-based Montreal's your favourite card.
No, I hate that card. I play it. I play it every deck I have, but I dislike that card.
Thought I'd just try and stick that one in there for you. And so then just before COVID hit, I've always sort of looked in the background at sort of what was going on with VtES, and there was a Kickstarter getting launched for a game called Vampire the Masquerade Chapters, which looked really, really cool, story-driven sort of game, and I went neck deep with that at the time on Kickstarter, but it made me have a look at VtES again, and I found one of the other eBay people, a bloke Rick Stock, and he's been around forever and a day as well, and he sold me a whole bunch of Jihad cards for not a lot of money, but quite a lot, like we're talking a few thousand, a really reasonable price. Got them shipped to Australia, and I just sort of thought, oh well, maybe I can put those in the corner and have a game with somebody, and maybe I can make some Jihad only decks. And then one thing led to another, and 18 months later, the Kickstarter game still hadn't been released, and I was just itching for Vampire the Masquerade and VtES, and found some old emails from about 15 years ago and put out the feelers, and found out that the group in Melbourne had really, really fractured and fragmented, but everyone was sort of still doing stuff on their own. I was like, well, I don't really want a Euro game anymore. Why don't I just play VtES? Because I really enjoy it. I love the lore, I love the artwork, and so I set about trying to bring everyone back together.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things was that for a period of time, I actually don't remember what it was that the group sort of. Oh, I remember now. The shop that was carrying it at one point closed down, which was why we kind of went our separate way before it got picked up a little bit again. There was a reasonably good effort from Benjamin Simcoff, if you remember him from. Yep. That was a pretty decent effort from him to sort of bring the group back together again, and it ran pretty well for a bit. And then, like mentioned, COVID hit. So yeah, we all sort of fractured quite a bit. And then when you came along, and I have to say, it is interesting that we sort of came back together because of how keen. Or you and this other gentleman called Andy. Andy runs his own local game shop. But between the two of you, there was quite a huge interest in bringing the gang back together, and also growing the the game. So at that point, thank you very much for your efforts in reviving VtES in Melbourne. So not only that you came back to the game, you brought the game back to a lot of us as well.
Yeah, cool. And I hope to stick around this time. That, you know, like you said earlier, you now you're older, you've got more money but less time, but I can now target my time more pointedly to you know, things that I want to do. And yeah, I love the game. I've somehow picked up, I don't know, I think my collection's now up to about 12 to 15,000 cards after literally just having that third ed starter set. But yeah, try to be pretty active on the forums or the Discord rather than the forums these days. Yeah, it's really good as well. Like, there's not just the same old faces doing the same old things, but we've been able to, I just did some really simple marketing things, like went out and got a banner made. And so we've found a new local game shop in the Melbourne CBD who have been really supportive of us. They, you know, at the start, they weren't even stocking the product, but they were like, yeah, cool, man, you can just use our tables if you want to buy some sleeves or some drinks. You know, that's fine. We've got a space. Come in whenever you want. So just sort of set up a banner and started off. I think the first few nights, I don't even think we hit 4 people, and that was, it was about November 2022, maybe November, December. So just on, let's just call it about 12 months ago. And then about November or December this year, we sort of hit our casual nightly peak. I think we had about 13 people in one night. So that was super exciting just to see some people returning, but also the player base growing as well.
I think one of the things that really did help us is, even though we do have a bit of an issue with distances, like the Ballarat guys it doesn't really make sense for them to come all the way into Melbourne to play. It doesn't really make sense for us to go all the way out there to play like on a weekly basis. But I think it's also really good in terms of people coming back to VtES, that there are multiple shops that are supporting it. So like you mentioned, we do play fairly often in the shop in Melbourne CBD, and Andy does carry the stock for the Ballarat guys. So I could be wrong, but I think at least, you know, they have a source of to get their VtES cards locally, and I think that helps a lot, because it'll help to, you know, having a place that supports it really does help people come back into the game as well. And I think you've seen it too with we've got a couple of players who have come out of the woodwork now, and they're starting to show up here and there for weekly games. And I think largely it's got to do with having a presence, just, you know, just being there and having products on the shelves, rather than, you know, having to meet at someone's place, and it's got very low visibility if we end up doing that.
Yeah, correct. If we all just sit around and play in our dining rooms or our kitchen or whatever and keep doing the same thing, then, you know, it won't really grow because it's not really getting it out there. I think this is the best card game going around, and yeah, I just want more people to see it and go, oh wow, what's that, and oh, how does that work, and holy heckers, you just got in there and beat that guy up and ripped his arms off.
Yeah. So one of the things, I think you came back because I sort of also left the game for a bit when White Wolf stopped printing the game. My mates and I went off to play a different multiplayer game for a bit and didn't really touch VtES, and then we lost some of the players. Well, they've moved on and, you know, decided that they didn't have the time or the energy to invest in VtES. But when we properly came back, and I think that's also about the time when you properly came back as well, someone else picked up the production of VtES, and so now we're in the 5th edition of VtES, And how does that compare when you're coming back? Because it's drastic. I feel personally that it is, even if it's recognizable, it is still drastically different in terms of feel from the original Jihad. Is that something that you notice as well, or?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, it is quite a bit different to the original Jihad. I have mentioned the word Jihad quite a few times, and that's just got that nostalgia of the artwork and the card layout and stuff in my mind from way back when, and what really captivated me and got me into it. But truth be told, I probably only played like 3 or 4 games of Jihad when it was Jihad. And like I said, none of those were really in a multiplayer sort of setting. And so now, the bulk of what I did play was actually when Kindred Most Wanted first came out. That was when I got back into the game properly, and then played through until might have been Swords of Cain, or it might have been the set just before that. And that was sort of where I did the bulk of my playing. But in terms of bringing that to where the current game state is compared to, so I'd rather not compare it back against Jihad, but more compare it back against that sort of 2004, 2005 to 2007, 2008. There's been some really good sort of erratas. Like I remember that we travelled up to the Australian Nationals one year, and someone was running that Una thing, which was a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, that was. Free Quick Drive is really good. Who would have thought?
Yeah, no, it's bonkers good. But yeah, that was sort of one of the erratas. But what have I noticed the most? I've noticed that anarchs are really powerful now. And I guess everything sort of goes in phases. So whether it's, like in the business world, from, startup to growth to bust, it seems that anarchs have gone from when I left, that they were sort of this funky kind of mechanic, to now they're, very clearly a big part of the V5 canon, and are making a big indent into the current game state. But I do also wonder that just because they're overrepresented, does that actually mean that they are busted, so to speak? I don't think so. I think that there are ways around what they do, and yeah, they've got some reduced stealth, reduced bleed, cards, and other things which might be the best of both worlds that you might have to pay for superior disciplines for. But I reckon that with the diversity of the older card pool, there's definitely some stuff out there which can rival them. It's just all been seen and been done before by the community that's been around and playing for 20 odd years, and they're just like the new thing. And it's like, hey, these are cool, and I'm sick of playing and winning with the old shiny, and now I want to play with some new shiny.
Yeah, definitely. I remember basically when anarchs became as easily accessed mechanic, because like you mentioned, it used to be something that you had to make work, because it was difficult, for lack of a better term, to make a vampire anarch. There was basically extra steps that you had to do, and then you really had to think about, before my vampires become anarch, how do I get them to work? Because if all my cards are anarch only, they're basically useless for a good number of turns. And I remember when anarch started to get printed directly onto vampires, people got really excited, and I think that's where what you said came into play, where, because it's new, right? Everyone just wanted to see how busted or how broken it potentially was. I think this is true when, I started VtES relatively late into the game. I think I only started in 3rd edition. But I remember when, I think it was Black Hand, or was it Sword of Cain? When Sword of Cain came out.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, my play group were like, ooh, Black Hand. because back then the entire playgroup that I was playing with was kind of new. So we didn't have access to the original Black Hand expansion, and when when sort of Kane came out, we all got really excited, and then for like the next months and months and months, you almost always had a Black Hand deck running around the table. Not saying Black Hand is good or busted in any way, but I think that part of why we're seeing so many Anarch decks these days, one is because they're just printed on the vampires, right? Like, even if you're not planning to lean hard into the Anarch tech, they're just kind of there. You've got Barons running around and what have you. And the other thing is really also, it's new and shiny. I mean, did it feel that way when you came back and then saw, ooh, this is all different? It feels different now. Did it make you want to build like new and shiny with the new toys?
No, it didn't actually. No. My immediate thought was, right, how can I school up these old school Anarchs? I'm still working on that. I've got something brewing in the something brewing on VDB that I'm sort of trying to figure out what I will how I will deal with it. I'm much more of my play style is shit. I'm not a great player. I know how to play, and I can try and do this and try and do that. I think I actually won one tournament once. It was something that Andy ran out of his basement at the time. I'm not sure if it ever actually got recorded. I think there was only 7 or 8 players. Was in 3rd edition just after Antonio got released, and I think I ran one of the first Nefandus decks in Australia that anyone else had seen. I traded for everyone's Nefandus and built a Nefandus deck, and I won that. And then this is how much of a good player I am. I went up to, I think it was Sydney. I reckon it was Sydney. It was the Sydney Championships that year, or the Australian Championships held in Sydney. And I made a Gangrel wall deck, and I had my Nefandus deck. And so the way how it used to work back in the day was you used to have to qualify to get into the Australian Championship. I'd already qualified from a prior event. So day one, I ran my Nefandus deck in the qualifier, and I actually think I came second. I did get into the finals table on that one, but I didn't win it. And then day 2, I played this untested Gangrel thing that was just complete garbage. I don't even think I got a VP. And one of our regular players, Jason, at the time, he's like, "Pieres, what the fuck are you doing? You play your fun, not so serious deck on the last chance qualifier if you're already qualified, and you play your serious deck on the game day." And I was like, yeah, that's good advice. Too late now.
If only you had that advice before you picked the decks, right?
Yeah, I think that he purposely kept it that way. No, just joking, Jason. But yeah, look, it's interesting. I don't know. I just want to try and I like to try and win with something that isn't stealth and bleed. I generally like to run a more toolboxy deck. Definitely like combat. It's hard to sort of win with combat. It doesn't really the number one question when you build a deck is, how will my deck oust? And that's a really difficult proposition for a combat deck to oust.
That's true. That is very true. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, so I didn't get to play in the Australian Championships this year, and so I'll definitely be playing this coming year in 2024. What will I do? I don't know. I've been playing with a few things. I've all sort of older schoolish. At the moment, I've been running a Chiacid deck that I've sort of found an old deck and sort of started tinkering with that and turned that into something crazy using goblinism and to tutor for the British Museum, and sort of more of a British Museum deck, but being able to tutor is pretty powerful. And so I try to build decks around what I think is powerful, which is your action. So if you can take, the more actions you can take, the more chance you've got of winning. Combat, the more resources you can take away from other people. Like if I can hit you for 3 and you hit me for 1, eventually it's going to get me some kind of an advantage. And blocking, I need to be able to deny other people their game. So that's sort of my deck ethos. And so now I need to be able to figure out what cards I'll use to be able to integrate that with the new and shiny Anarch stuff.
Sounds like you're going all sorts of direction with one deck. Just shy of clan impersonation at this point.
Yeah, no, that's not my thing. I'm not into that.
You did mention that the starting point, I guess, of your journey coming back into VtES was a Kickstarter for I think it was a World of Darkness game, but it was a VtES adjacent sort of game. And has that Kickstarter arrived? Has it become actual product?
Yeah, look, so it's not anything to do with VtES. They had a VtES promo in there, Gabriel Tremblay, but it was more of a World of Darkness. Think Gloomhaven. If you've played Gloomhaven, that's pretty mainstream, but it's very story driven. So you have interactions between characters and NPCs, and there's a bit of fighting and stuff in there. But it's a few 100,000 words of dialogue and stuff. Yes, it arrived. Unfortunately, it's been a serious flop. But, oh well, it got me back into VtES, so that's a win in and of itself, right?
Yep, 100%. Well, I was originally going to ask, like, if now that the game that you backed on Kickstarter has arrived, what is it that's still keeping you coming back for more VtES week after week? But I guess part of it is because, unfortunately, the Kickstarter didn't live up to its hype. But I think the question is still valid. What is it that, now that you've come back for a little bit more than a year, what is it that's keeping you coming back, and what is it that will keep you coming back for more?
It's the fact that the games aren't taken super seriously. Like, people don't have tantrums if they lose. Everyone's sort of more mature. I think a lot of people are in that sort of mid-30s to early 40s sort of mark. Everyone's there to have a good time and to try some stuff out and just to have fun. So it's really I think the social side is quite there as well for me. And also everyone's love for the lore. So that's one thing that I've really noticed about VtES compared to other games, is that people really get into the lore of, oh, this is such and such a vampire and they do this and they do that, or, ooh, these are my setites, and they love to, or the ministry, whatever they're called these days, they love to get in there and seduce people and, tempt them. And yeah, it's just really that underground, that underlying sort of lore, coupled with almost like very, very minute, not role playing, but it touches into the greater canon of vampire.
That's actually a good point. There's something that we used to have a lot of, I think, from Kindred Most Wanted, actually, possibly even from earlier than that. But I think Kindred Most Wanted was my first introduction to that sort of cards where you had clearly real-world historical figures, and that was what got me interested in, like, the backstory behind some of the vampires, and that led me to really getting into the lore itself. And there are only so many historical figures that we can draw on for VtES, but I think that might be a little bit unfortunate from my point of view that we don't really have any more of those cards where it's, things like Matahari, cards like Manalus, and, well, it's not Manalus in VtES. I can't remember who he is in VtES. Manala, I think, and Helen or Helena.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you get a lot of, you look at it and, hey, I know this person, and you start to look at it, you look into it, because I don't know what the percentage of players out there come from the World of Darkness, role-playing game, or any other of the the World of Darkness products where they're more familiar with the lore. My first interaction with the World of Darkness was actually the VtES. So it actually took cards like Matahari, and there were a few. I keep saying Matahari because she's the one that really just sticks out as, hey, that's clearly a historical figure. And that's what got me into the story, and then getting in the story got me back in excited about the cards themselves. And that's why I started, realizing that, hey, Helena and Manella are actually Helen of Troy and Menelaus. And there is a Vampire in on Keepers of Tradition expansion that was the inspiration for Sherlock Holmes.
Oh wow, there you go.
Yeah, I can't remember. If we have any of our listeners or viewers who are more well versed in the lore, like really deep, well versed into the lore, both Sherlock Holmes and VtES, let me know who I think I'm talking about. But I can't remember who it is. But anyway, that was just something that was what kept me coming back. But definitely also the social side of it. Even though there are games where after the first few turns, you're not in a good position, you're definitely going to lose, you're not going to have a good game. But I think most of us do have the maturity to not just throw a huge tantrum right there and then, sort of ruin the game for everyone. So as much as it's a multiplayer game, it also, it tells a lot. The VtES players are a different kind. And I think that's good.
Yeah, and so that's I agree, and I think that's what brings me back. It's the people, the new and the old, and the new people ironically just sort of slot in and they want to learn about, hey, oh wow, what's this guy and what's that clan and how do they work and what makes them tick and and so on and so forth, which is exciting, like, because that's a big part of the game, which kind of gets me excited. Sounds like it gets you excited a bit as well.
Yep.
And so the fact that they want to, keep that on is really good. So I guess looking ahead, like what do the next 12 months look like? I reckon it'd be really good if we could, I think we've sort of grown. I think we've got a pool of now, maybe there's about 14 to 16 people who have sort of been have come along to the play group in the last 12 months. I think it'd be good if we could, maybe get 20 to 24 people show up to a tourney. I reckon that'd be awesome. I don't know if we'll do that, but you got to aim for something and try to figure it out. I came up with a slow grow league where you sort of week 1 you buy a starter, week 2 a new blood deck, and then week 3 anything sort of goes with what you've got. And I'd like to see another one of those. One of the things that I really like, and Black Chantry have been really good at not just keeping the game going, but their honest and open communication. There's no sort of cloak and dagger behind, their intent. It's all very clear. Their roadmap that they put out was excellent. And so I think I'd like to look to run another one of those slow grow leagues once we get the new blood decks for the La Sombra and the Hecata. I think I'll probably look to run that then, just to try and really grow that scene and expand the game, because the more people that see it, the more people that will play it. And let's be honest, I haven't played Magic since, I don't know, 98 or something, but apparently there's something called Commander, and every Commander player knows that deep down they're really a VtES player.
Yeah, Commander is really the other, I think, big multiplayer card game right now. It's going around. It is fairly easy to transition, I think, from a Commander into VtES. So there's definitely a reasonably sized pool of potential players that might be, we might be able to convince to come over and play VtES with us, because VtES is just better.
Yep, sure is. Sure is.
Yeah, I can imagine the Magic the Gathering pitchforks and torches in over that last statement, but you have to stand by something, right? We all do. So what would you say to a player that is currently in a similar situation as you were a year and a bit ago, where they're, for whatever reason, maybe they have a little bit of their collection left, or something triggered reignited their interest in having another game of VtES, and they're thinking about it, thinking of coming back. What would you say they should do, other than, I mean, the obvious, just come back?
Find a clan, focus on a clan, and especially if you just want to try and dabble and reignite your like for the game, find a clan, focus on a clan. All the clans can do, they can all be played completely differently. When I first came back, so I don't know, let's call it 12 months ago, I focused exclusively on the old school Ravnos for about 6 months or so, and made a few sort of funky decks with them. I call it chemistry, you call it chemistry or something, I don't know. I'll still call it chemistry, which I think was one of the cool things in one of the original World of Darkness books. It said there's no correct way to pronounce any of these words we've made up. You know, it sort of does a whole bunch of different funky stuff, and you know, I played with that for 6 months and decided, this game's cool, and I won a few games, lost some games. Most importantly, I had fun, and then I sort of saw what everyone else was playing, and it sort of evolves, and you can then see how after you choose a clan that you want to try out and try and understand everything about them, you can then see what everyone else plays and get a bit more of a flavor for what is out there, and to find really your play style and what you really like, and then make your next move based on that.
And that's a really good point, actually, that don't come back, being too worried about, I mean, sure, if you are the type that would like to try new things all the time, go nuts, go ham, try the new stuff. But if it's something that you want to come back to VtES and you've already got an old clan that you like, or where you're more familiar with the older cards, and that's a good point, actually, to come back, play something you're comfortable with. You want to ease back into the game, so to speak, and then from that on, start looking at what are the newest cards you can play with that catch your attention, what you like about the newer stuff, and then slowly transition into that. So yeah, I think that is pretty much the podcast for today. Thank you very much, Pieres, for coming on and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be a semi-regular co-host with you. As you know, there's always stuff to talk about, and find that we unfortunately might even lose too much of our game nights by just talking too much VtES at the table before we set up and actually get our games in.
I feel like that's a common problem for the playgroups all around the world. I haven't come across any playgroup that come in, sit down, and then everybody just goes like, all right, we're here, let's play, no talking, let's go. I don't think anyone actually does that. Ultimately, this is a social game. But yeah, definitely looking forward to having you back for more VtES topics. So if you're watching this or listening and you really like it, thank you for staying with us all the way to the end of this podcast. That is amazing. And on behalf of Pieres and I, until next time, see ya.